lost all control. Her gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes in with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. The claws in my heart, I can't let go, I'm breaking apart, controlling me, controlling me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Paranormal Portal, Bedtime Stories from Beyond. If you're new to the Bedtime Stories, what they are is basically a shortened version of the Paranormal Portal. So they're anywhere from a half hour to an hour long, usually close to an hour, or sometimes a hair over, but they're not quite as long as our Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday episodes. But they are just a time to share some stories with you, and the phone lines are always open, of course. If you'd like to call in and be a part of the show, you have something of your very own you'd like to share, love to hear from you. And the phone number is 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. If you're wondering during the show, like, what was that number? Just look up here under the deal. Says call in, and then there's a really small number that I still haven't blown up yet. Oh man, I always mean to do that. But anyway, that's the number for the show, and the phone line is always open on the Paranormal Portal, but no guest tonight. Good to see you, Shell. I haven't seen you in here before during one of the bedtime stories, but it's wonderful to see you in the door. So hello to everyone else: Virginia, Zero, Sarah, Pam, Nellie, Kevin. Good to see you. Oh, good time. Kevin's first time in the chat. So great to see you, Kevin. Thanks for coming in. Really appreciate you stopping in and being a part of the show. Kenneth is here. Again, Shell is here. Who else? Dana. Hello, Dana. Just going through the list here manually. Bigfoot Michigan Rob's here. Good to see you. And Renee is here. Renee Harvey. And then I don't know if our other Renee is here yet or not, or if he's coming in tonight. I'm not sure. But welcome to everybody, and thank you so much for being a part of the show. Oh, Ken just walked in. Good to see you, Ken. Good to see you, brother. Lewis is here. Wes, how you doing, brother? Good to see you. Great to see you. Yes, yeah, we're off and running here. So welcome to the show, everybody, and got some stories pulled up for you, but first, I just hope you're all ready, because it's time for bed. You guys will have to tell me how hard did that volume come in on that, because it sounded really loud in my ears compared to my voice. So if you have to scrape your underwear now, I do apologize. I don't know. I try to level this all off, but I just thought, God, that really hit hard. I had some guy cuss me out in a YouTube message once, like, "Oh my God," he thought he broke his headphones. True story. I swear to God, I'm not fabricating that. It's a true story. He was cussing me out something huge about that, the way that came in, and it just cracked me up personally. But, I don't, I don't want to hurt anybody. So if you're listening with headphones, just be aware. Could happen. Anybody else come in? Nope, I guess that's it. Oh, Terrestrial Mac, good to see you. And I don't see any other names. So let's get going. I got some stories pulled up for you guys tonight. I hope they're interesting. I hope they're good. I don't really pre-read them before the show, which is probably a rookie thing, but I kind of like discovering these stories with you guys. I don't know. I always have. I've never pre-read stories before the show. I'll just find different things to bring to you guys and then read them at length on the show. But then, I just like that the discussion they bring up and the things that occur to me as we cover them. So anyway, but again, the call-in line is open if you want to call in and have something of your own to share. I just got a great email from Sharon, listener, and she sent me a video, and I'll be showcasing that probably on Friday or Saturday, depending on if we end up with a guest on one of those nights or not. Right now, nothing's scheduled that I know. Wait, maybe, no, I don't think Deb's coming on until the next weekend. I'll have to check the schedule, but so it's a really cool video. It's very short, but it's really poignant, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that with you guys. So you'll have to make sure to show up on Friday or Saturday night or check the replay. And our other podcast launched today. It's part 1 of 2, covering the Black-Eyed Kids. So if you haven't checked it out, please do. Had a number of great responses from that today. And thank you all who have supported our podcasting efforts, and special thanks to Revolver for making that possible. And a special thanks to Mr. Wes Germer, who suggested it. And I really appreciate your help, brother. But yeah, it's out there today. The second part to that will be next Monday, because the way the podcast roll is on Mondays, we're doing ghost and spirit-related stuff. On Wednesdays, we're doing UFO-related stuff. And then on Fridays, we're doing Bigfoot, dogmen, cryptid stuff on the podcast. So if there's a part 1 and 2, they will be on their respective days the following week. I'm not sure if that's going to work out well or not, but that's what we're trying, just to keep that formula intact. It may work out that we have to, put the part 1 and 2 back to back, but we're trying it out. So let me know what you guys think, if that's too long to go between or not. I do appreciate your guys' feedback on this, because, the podcasting effort is a little new to us. So there's a lot of things to sort out. So let's get to some of these stories, though. Let's see. Okay. The first one I'm going to read you tonight is coming from California. So what's going on in California tonight? Well, stick around and I'll tell you. It says, this is the only time I've ever had a paranormal experience, thankfully, because I don't know if I could survive another one. I was about 14 at the time, but I'm 25 now. And this story's from 2007, so it's quite a bit older now. But anyway, and I was spending winter vacation at my grandparents' house. Now, my grandparents' house wasn't old. It wasn't reportedly haunted or even built on an Indian burial ground. Nothing dramatic, just a newer house built in the forest. I was sleeping in the spare bedroom with my cousin and was slowly awakened by what I don't remember. But suddenly I was wide awake. There in the glow from the fireplace lighting the room was a black figure walking just outside the doorway to beside the bed, right beside me. This figure had no discernible features, but it was as big as the door frame and was just walking out to the hallway and back to the bedside, and I was paralyzed with fear. My stomach would clench as the figure drew nearer and nearer, terrified that it would reach out and touch me. It would get close and then turn around again, and I was scared, but not so much that I couldn't elbow my cousin and ask her to switch places with me. Wow, that's a little harsh. She just groaned and never did wake up. I don't know what or who it could have been, but I couldn't have felt too threatened because I fell back to sleep eventually. That's it. No big ending. I never encountered it again, and as I got older, I wondered, could it have been someone in my family or even someone in my cousin's family, her other side, protecting us during the night? Something to discuss at holidays with the family for sure. Now that kind of stuff does come up a bunch, and quite honestly, I suppose just seeing a spirit is enough to set most people off. I mean, it just doesn't normally happen. So when something like that happens, it is, of course, earth shattering. But I think that we fall into that pattern. But again, it's a shadowy figure approaching your bed. That's got to be terrifying, whether it's a spirit or whether it's a person. I mean, really, right? But just because a spirit appears as a shadow does not mean that it's negative. And again, I default back to the old 50s and 40s and 30s and 20s, the old movies and westerns and stuff. And well, the good guys wore white and the bad guys wore black. And somehow that seems to have stuck with us, that if anything's black, it's got to be bad. And that's, that, and in the case of spirits and, other shadowy things, it's like, well, if it's dark, it must be evil. Well, no, it doesn't have to be. So I don't know if that falls under just a sociological precondition or something. I don't know. But there's many times, and I've heard it from many mediums, that have told me that spirits just sometimes choose to be shadowy. They don't want to, and maybe it takes too much energy. I don't know, but they say that sometimes spirits will appear as a shadowy form, just to try not to alarm people. And that part is a little weird to me because, as far as I know, or as far as what I understand, spirits don't have to appear at all. They can just be invisible. But again, I think in some of these cases where people see them, it may be more to do with the person being in that right state of mind, being more open than normal, that they're able to perceive more. And that's why they see these spirits from time to time. And the shock of seeing them, I think, jolts them back into their normal frame of reference for their awareness. And so is it possible that since this person was sleeping, they were in a really relaxed, open state and were woken up by something, and when they were woken, they were still opened up enough to perceive this shadowy figure coming back and forth. And then afterwards, they were just able to go back to sleep. And I don't know how anybody could go back to sleep after that, but I guess maybe the person really didn't feel that threatened, like they said. I don't know, but it's got to be a creepy experience. But I wonder about that. It's like, are the spirits choosing to be seen, or are we just getting into a certain mindset where we can perceive them better other times, sometimes over other times? That didn't come out well at all. But anyway, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say, that perhaps it's not the spirits revealing themselves or hiding themselves. Perhaps it's us just being in the correct frame of mind that we're able to perceive them visually. Now, I think they can, of course, choose to throw stuff around and make knockings on the wall and, whatever to reveal themselves. But I do think the visual part might be just as much us as it is them. Just a thought, just a theory, but, I think there's something to that. I really do. All right, let's get to the next one. This is coming out of New York. So let's see what's going on in New York tonight. Okay, so this says, I got to get through the fluffy crap. This story is much more personal, but I feel good about the people who share this site, so I will post it here. Feel free to share thoughts about the story, blah, blah, blah. I didn't go far enough. The story begins late in the night, very early in the morning, after midnight, January the 1st, 1977. It was New Year's Eve, and I am 8 years old at the time. I will turn 9 at the end of January that year. My mother, brother, and myself were living in the basement apartment of my grandmother's house, and we were all sound asleep when we were suddenly awakened by a shrieking from upstairs where my grandmother lives. We are all three woken up and head up the stairs at a run. My grandmother's on her knees on the kitchen floor, and I know this is really bad, on the phone, shrieking and crying. My mother, Ashen, moves toward my grandmother and gently takes the phone from her, and she speaks into the phone. My uncle is on the line, and he tells my mother that my cousin Kenny has been killed in an accident by a drunk driver. He was 17 years old. This instance begins an inward collapse of a portion of the family. The house is in chaos that night. My mother tells me that my brother, what has happened, and my brother, who was just 7 at the time, is absolutely distraught. Once it begins to dawn on me what has happened, I immediately curse God and fall to the floor, blacking out. My cousin was the source of much joy and love in our family, and my brother and I fiercely loved him. The wake, funeral, and burial are held over the next few days, and my brother and I are not allowed to attend any of it. I tell my mother I want to be a part of saying goodbye, but she tells me I'm too young. Here begins, I suppose, the ghost story portion of this tale. In the basement apartment, my brother and I shared a room, and his bed was near the door. My bed was against the far wall, opposite the door. At the foot of my bed was a tall children's wardrobe. One side was a tall set of drawers, and the other side was a vertical closet with a door. And since it stands at the foot of my bed, you know that I make certain every night that the closet door is shut tight. Otherwise, how is a young child to sleep? With the dark and creepy closet door ajar? I think not. So yeah, I'd close the door every night before I climbed into the covers, and then one night, a few days after my cousin was laid to rest, I woke in the middle of the night with the closet door ajar, open, and I looked and saw a figure in the closet, and it moved forward towards me in the bed and stopped a few feet away from where I lay. I wasn't afraid. It was my cousin who had been killed. So his appearance just made me feel sad. I cried out of sadness, and he gave me a tender look. Then he began to speak to me, and he told me that I should not have cursed God, that God had nothing to do with his dying. He said it was just an accident. Then he told me that he loved me very much and that he had come to say goodbye. I think I told him I loved him too, and then cried some more, but told him goodbye also. We talked a bit more, but it is difficult to remember. After a while he seems to go, and I seem to fall back to sleep, and the next I recall, it is morning. The same scenario plays out every few nights, almost the same time every night for the next month, until finally it just doesn't happen anymore. I think this happened because my cousin was torn so quickly from his family that he needed to linger, but also because I blame God, and my cousin wanted to make sure I did not curse God for his accident. Then I think it was just because we had a special bond, he and I. I'm not sure. And no one else in the family has spoke of having a similar experiences with him after he died. Then again, if they did, they might have just be as reluctant as I am to talk about it. Kenny's death was much more major traumas, was one of the major traumas that happened to my family, so it would have been difficult to discuss real thoughts, much less talk about seeing his ghost. Well, that's a beautiful story. Again, I've had the dream kind of stories like that where, with my dad came and visited me. I'm sure it was real. I mean, it was so profound, and it was over a couple dreams. And apparently he visited my brother as well. And I don't know about my other brothers, but I had my grandmother visit me as well. And in all those cases, as painful as those losses were, it was really a healing, amazing moment to have those experiences, because, it was like I could put that pain away, because I knew it was all right. I knew they were all right. And, I firmly believe that we go to something after this. I mean, I don't pretend to know what to call it, whether it's a heaven or whether it's a place of rest, or, how to characterize it. I couldn't begin to tell you, but I just feel and believe that this is the truth. So I never really worried that there was anything, wrong with their souls or that they were in any trouble, but it's just the loss. It's just that emptiness that when these people that are so profoundly a part of our lives are gone, it's just like all you're left with is this hole. And those holes are just empty and cold. And both of those dreams were incredibly healing. They were just like, suddenly those holes kind of just closed on their own because it was okay. I knew they were okay. They both told me they were happy and everything was fine and wonderful. And that's I guess what I needed to hear. So, if I don't know, I wish everybody would have those experiences when they're dealing with such profound loss, because it really, it cut my mourning process down to very little, just having those experiences. So, I really believe in that kind of stuff. I do believe that our loved ones visit us when they can, and maybe we don't recall the dreams. Maybe they visit every one of us, but we just, most of us don't remember our dreams. And usually I don't either, but they were so incredibly lucid when they happened, I couldn't have missed it. I dream really stupid things, usually like things that make absolutely no sense at all. But these dreams were something completely different. They were just real. The settings were perfect. The smells, the sights, everything just lined up exactly with what was in my memory. And so I never dreamed like that otherwise. So, and to have these conversations where they were giving me a dialogue that I hadn't expected. And so, I don't think it's just a fabrication of a grieving mind. Maybe it is. I don't know, but I don't believe that. And the gift, of course, is knowing they're okay and knowing they're still around. And that's incredibly powerful. So for whatever it's worth. All right, let's see what's going on in other places. I'm opening some more for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that story. I thought that was a good one. Okay, here's the next one. This one's coming from California. Every September, me and my husband go to San Francisco for a quiet getaway. This year, we cut our time short in the city to stay one night at the lodge. And I heard stories about the Brookdale Lodge, but wanted to see it for myself. Being completely open-minded and wanting to see the permanent visitors, I felt we had a chance. We checked in and went to our room, which was number 22, and got settled and waited for the dining room to open at 5 p.m. And one of the spots where at least 2 visitors have been viewed. We were the first to be seated in the dining room. Nothing. I even took pictures in hope of catching something, but nothing. While in the dining room, looked a bit tired and past its prime. The food was wonderful, very generous portions, nicely presented, and so we had a great dinner with no visitors, and I was terribly sad, but I guess it just wasn't meant to be. We went back to our room and turned on the television and waited or watched the news for a short while when we heard someone moving into the room right next to us with the seemingly empty parking lot. Why do they put people in rooms right next to each other? We were getting a little concerned as our new neighbors were a bit too loud, not their television, but conversation, muffled, and lots of walking around, and my husband always travels with earplugs just for occasions like these, noisy hotel neighbors. He seemed to be okay for the evening, and we turned out the lights and went to sleep. We woke probably 3 hours later with our room being incredibly hot. The heater switch is off, no heat coming from the heating unit, and we figured it was our downstairs neighbor's heater, the theory that heat rises. Our neighbors were still walking around, but their talking stopped, and we fell back to sleep. As we checked out the next morning, I inquired of our host if we had neighbors in the rooms on either side of us. The answer was no. The heat thing? Probably unlikely. Our room would have become incredibly hot without a heating source being in the room. My thoughts? We didn't see the permanent visitors, but we heard them, and I'm very pleased. That's awesome. They went looking for it and they had some kind of experience. That's cool. I guess it wasn't a wasted journey then, eh? All right, and the phone lines are open, ladies and gentlemen. If you got something you want to share, please feel free. But I'll continue reading here. I got a bunch more pulled up, so let's see what's going on in Oklahoma next. My husband and I have 4 kids, and we moved into our 40-year-old home. We think it is actually closer to 44 years old. I guess that's important, but last year, and since then I've heard footsteps on the stairs, like a lightweight adult steps, and when nobody is up, I will check and everyone is sound asleep. The steps seem to stop at the entryway of our bedroom, my master bedroom. Sometimes when this happens, my border collie will charge up the stairs, run into my room, and hide her head in the corner. She usually isn't like this. And I've heard this several times with no one around, all still sleeping, and I have been in bed and felt the covers pulled down tight on one side of my body, yet no one is there to sit next to me. I turn over and no one is there at all. About a month or so ago, I went downstairs to let the dog outside, and it was around 3:30 a.m., and this is when most of the activity happens. And I let her out and left the back door ajar and went into the bathroom downstairs just a few feet away from the dining room. And the dining room has a ceramic tile flooring with 6 wooden chairs at the table, and I heard these loud scraping noises. Someone scooting the chairs under the table. The noise is very distinctive, as my kids do this all the time. I froze, thinking that someone had come in the house through the back door that I left open for our dog. I went into the dining room, but there was nobody there. The dog was still outside, and she would have normally barked and come back inside. 3 chairs were pulled out from under the table. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was sitting here at my computer and felt a hand rest on my ribs. I thought one of my kids came up behind me, but nobody was there. Clearly, someone put their hand on my ribs. Then within a few minutes, someone tapped on my shoulder. Again, no kids. No one. I went to check them. They were watching TV. I have no idea what is going on. I've been somewhat skeptical of ghosts, but now am open to any suggestions. Thank you all so much. And also, it seems to me that observe these things. One of my daughters did hear the footsteps on one occasion, and I am not just crazy, just a mom to 4 kids. Go to church, Sunday school, etc. I had to put an AC unit in my room, which helps to block out the footsteps. Well, that's, for all intents and purposes, it doesn't sound like it's really a negative haunt. It just sounds like a presence. I think it's funny, though, that so often, and you'll hear this quite a bit from paranormal investigators, that the witching hour was long believed to be the midnight. But in paranormal investigating, the real active time is between 3 and 4 a.m. Something about that time of the day is just, I don't know, it's just a catalyst for activity if you're in a haunted house. Something about that time of day is just really conducive to generating spiritual energy or spiritual actions. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but including the DeFeo, he was the murderer behind the Amityville Horror. Apparently he woke up every morning at like 3:00 something. And I don't remember the exact minute mark, but it was like continuously every morning he allegedly was awoken at the very same time. And it was kind of his downward slide, I guess. I don't know. Really creepy. But again, I don't know why that is. I'm not sure, but it definitely has been brought up many, 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 many times in my research that 3 and 4 a.m. is really the hot times. I'm always up at around 3 or 4 a.m. And I never really noticed anything other than that strange old-timey perfume that I'll smell every once in a great while. But I don't think there's anything negative in this house, to be honest with you. All right, so let's continue our journey, and we're going to New York again. Heading back to New York. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, my God. Let's see. I'm trying to get through all the... I don't know. Some of these stories start up with so much dialogue that's nonsense. So I want to get to the good part. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know. I'm going to skip this story. It doesn't even make sense. So let me get to the next one. We're not going to New York after all. Change of plans here, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to California again. Heading back to California. It was like someone sitting right on my lap, according to the ghost radar. I was like right here. Or no, I guess right here. Huh. That's a ghost app. If you ever hear that, I got this ghost radar working on the computer beside me. And if it detects a ghost, that's not an actual ghost sound. It's just the warning sound that they gave this stupid thing. It's creepy as hell. But when you hear that sound, that just means that it's detecting a presence in my room. Again, I don't know. I don't know if there's something to this thing or not. For the ghost radar thing, the science behind it is there is a magnetometer in your computer. It's how wireless works, basically. And so the computer should be able to detect electromagnetic fluctuations. But the EMF range that it can record is really pretty narrow. It's really pretty small. So it's not as cohesive as like an EMF detector that is used in paranormal investigating. But by all intents and purposes, from what I understand, and I don't understand a lot. I'm not claiming to understand a whole lot about this, but from what I understand, there is logic to the fact that it could be able to detect some electromagnetic fields. But I don't know, is that what it's doing, or is it just something else? I don't know. Now, the thing is that this thing will sit here sometimes for months and not do anything. Now, the last several days, it's been very, very active. Now, could it also be something like sun activity, solar activity? Sure, it could be. I don't know if we're experiencing any solar storms currently, but that would be something to reference for something like this as well. But I don't know. It just went off now. It has been spitting out words every once in a while too, but not today. So far, no words. Okay, so let's see. Now, but last night, I actually did see something weird just past my monitor over here. And then, boom, that thing went off at the same time. So that was the coolest correlation I've ever seen from it. Otherwise, to me, it almost seems random, but I don't know. Maybe it's not. It's still up in the air. Yeah, if you have stories, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Julia, for pointing that out. If you have a story of your own and would like to share it on the show, but don't want to call in and share it yourself, please email it to the show at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com. I will share it for you. Just let me know in the email if you want to be named or not, because, if you're okay with it, cool, that's great. But if you're not okay with it, let me know. So, all right, let's see. Okay. All right, so this one is California. Let's go here. Sorry, got an itchy nose. My fellow investigator, Paul, had his hunches about Sutter's Fort after getting ghost reports on his route hotline. So we rambled around in the Twilight Zone looking for any sign of anomalous mischief. Much of the time was picking up EVPs and then blushing when realizing it was only the ambient sounds of downtown Sacramento on Saturday. Oh, I'm not going to read this. This is more like a log. Every once in a while I run across these paranormal investigator files, and they're wonderful, but they don't really lend themselves to great storytelling on on an entertainment show. So I'm going to skip that one, ladies and gentlemen. We're not going to California either. But instead, we're going to Florida. Hang on, going to Florida. My family's always had this problem. We can see and hear things that shouldn't be there. When I was very young, my mom, sister, and I lived in a small 2-bedroom house, and it was always really pretty creepy. At night, I had trouble falling asleep, and I still do. Well, later at night, I would hear things. The fridge opening, footsteps in the hallway, weird things like that. One night, I got up to go to the bathroom and see the fridge open, and nobody was there. I really didn't think much of it and went about my business, and well, through the time we lived there, things like this kept happening. And as I got older, I started to get freaked out. And one day I asked Mom what it was. And her response was, "It's just Papa." I was too young to remember Papa. He passed when I was about 2. And all of this happened until we moved when I was 12. I know Papa was always watching over us because of all the other weird stuff that was happening at that house. His tool shed was pretty freaky, so much so he wouldn't go near it, or so much so I wouldn't go near it unless I absolutely had to. I had plenty of experiences to share about that and other things that happened when I was a kid, but hearing things is by far the scariest thing that happened to me there. Well, there you have it. Papa was. That's really gotta suck. If you're a spirit and you're spending your time staring into a refrigerator and you can't eat anything, that's gotta be hell. All right, let's see what else is going on out here in the world of paranormal activities. Okay, the next one's coming from Kansas, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just peek, make sure I'm not missing nothing. Okay, we're good. All right, so when I was 17, I lived in rural Kansas near one of the Civil War battlefields. Wow, that would be supercharged, I'm sure. Throughout my childhood, I had been plagued with ghostly visits and nightmares of drowning in a river. One night I was having an awful nightmare, and this one was particularly disturbing because I kept seeing myself dead in bloody water in a bathtub. And, I could smell death, and I was consumed by fear because this seemed all too real. Just then, I was gently shaken awake, and when I awoke, I sat up in bed and realized that I was still alive. No one was there. I shook it off and went back to sleep. A while later, I continued to have this ominous dream, only this time, I saw my body laying in a bathtub full of blood in my grandparents' bathroom. Their house is just down the road from me, and again, I was awakened from this horrific scenario, but in the same gentle yet urgent manner. But there was nobody there again. At this time, I thought I had merely been imagining the feeling of being shaken awake, but I was too tired to contemplate it, so I went back to sleep, and once again, I resumed the torment of dreaming my own death in a bloody bathtub. And this time, the dream had a change of location to my ex-boyfriend's bathroom. There were demons present in the dream this time, and I became really frightened and found myself in this upstairs bedroom, and I imagined to seek consoling from him. And after scanning the room, I found out he was not there. However, I did stay long enough to take note that he had rearranged his room, and it was rather tidy, and I noticed his drawing board was in a different location, prepped with notebook paper that had safety pins in each corner of the paper. For the last time, someone woke me up, and this time with an even more urgency. So, as soon as I opened my eyes, there was an attractive young man hovering parallel to my body about 2 feet above me. I froze. He was glowing white with well-defined features, but he had no body, only a fading torso. He was looking at me really intensely, and his mouth was moving in an obvious attempt to communicate with me, as if he was trying desperately to give me a message from beyond the grave. My heart was pounding, and when I was finally able to move out of my frozen state after what seemed like at least a minute, I rolled off my bed and ran into my mother's room, and after relaying the fantastically horrifying experience to her, she just said, Amy, go back to bed. Oh, these lovely parents. Those poor kids. Oh, man. They're having the most terrifying dreams of their lives. It's like, you realize what time it is. Go back to bed. Oh, God. All right. I did not return to my room that night. Needless to say, I slept within my 6-year-old brother's room instead. The story does not end there. The next morning, I had play practice at school, and during the break, my female cast members and I went to the girls' room to freshen up. And while I was washing my hands, a rather obnoxious girl came bolting into the bathroom, hysterically shouting, "I seen a ghost! I seen a ghost!" And she said that it was down the hallway from the theater and identified the apparition as being a young male. I think I turned white. I didn't utter a word to anyone about my ghostly visit the night before. Quickly, I exited the girls' room and went to the commons area to make a quick phone call to my ex-boyfriend to make sure he was still alive. We had not spoken nor seen each other for 2 weeks, and I was a little worried at this point that he might be deceased. The ghostly man in my room had resembled my ex-boyfriend, but I had not thought of the possibility that it actually could have been he who gave me the ether-worldly visit that night. I hastily shoved a quarter into the payphone and dialed his number, and I was relieved to hear his voice. And when he answered, he was indeed still breathing, and his blood was still pumping through his veins, and I described the whole creepy incident to him, even the part about me visiting his room in the night, and he remained silent, listening to my every word. And when I was finished telling him everything, he said that he did clean his room and rearrange some things as I had described them. Also, he noted that his drawing board was where I had said it was in the dream, only there was drawing paper, not notebook paper, and paper clips in the corners of the board, not safety pins. Now in my 30s, I continue to have creepy nightmares to this day, and although I have heard and felt strange things, I've not physically seen an apparition since I was about 19. The mystery remains of who the ghostly man was. My theory is that it was either a Civil War ghost who watched over the place or an apparition who followed me home from one of the cemeteries I used to visit. Wow. Well, it's a good one, I guess. Creepy. So she was kind of astrally projecting at the same time then. Very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so the next one, how are we doing for time? 43 minutes? We're doing great. Julia's just rocking it in there, isn't she? I love it. She's like my personal billboard. Love you, Julia. All right, let's go to North Carolina. This one's kind of a long one, so this may be the last one of the night, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see how long it takes. So this story is the second experience that I dealt with, being visited and paralyzed in my sleep. Man, these are the worst. I don't like these, just because I've experienced this thing, and it's horrible. The first one is another story that I had already submitted, but the story begins with a first little background, then a ridiculous beginning. Just bear with me because it will get better. It begins in the year 2000 in a house that I was renting in a little town called Icard. That must be in North Carolina, I guess. This place is gloomy to begin with, but I lived there out of necessitation. I don't know if that's a word, necessitation or necessity. Necessitation. People were sort of backwoods, so to speak, but not very friendly. I remember the first day I walked through the house, something just didn't feel right. But I decided to take it anyway. I later found out that the previous owner had died there in the living room, and I would often hear faint whispers and see things out of the corner of my eye. I would also find myself sliding in the shower door open to see if someone was watching me because it felt like it at the time. here's where the ridiculous part begins. I had become somewhat addicted to a video game called CTR, Crash Team Racing, on my PlayStation. To this day, it remains one of my absolute favorites, and in this game, it contains different icons, and one of which is that of a tiki statue that could be good or evil. So one night I came home after being out with some friends and pretty much went straight to bed. And I hadn't laid there but a few minutes when I had this terrible feeling that I wasn't alone. This time I was lying on my back and I slowly opened my eyes out of dread. And what I then saw was a large black swirling mass in the upper left-hand corner of the door of my room. Then out of the center of it appeared the evil tiki face statue. It was bright red and orange, and the image then disappeared, but the blob remained. As I lay motionless, it started a slow descent. They said descent, D-I-S-S-E-N-T, but I think they mean D-E-S-C-E-N-T, descent, down the door, and I knew that it was coming for me, but I laid stock still, not knowing what to expect. I could clearly see it as it crept across the floor, coming towards me. I'm getting goosebumps just writing this. And when it reached the side of my bed, it sank as if to be out of my view. My heart was beating out of my chest. And I remember thinking, oh no, not again. I knew in my mind that it was coming under the covers, and sure enough, I felt them move, and it had reached under in order to make contact with my skin ever so slowly. The instant I felt its icy finger touch my left arm, it was as if it had stuck an electric cord in me. I was literally being shocked. Then it spoke and said, "Just one more time," which to this day baffles me. My body was jolting from head to toe. Then from out of nowhere, I thought, God, please help me. And just like that, immediately stopped. I got up to turn on the light and noticed that it was really cold in my room. Shortly thereafter, my next-door neighbor showed up on my doorstep, witnessing to me. What that means is a person who feels that God has put it in their mind and heart to tell you about your sins in order to save your soul. Never ever really being involved in a church, I didn't have a clue as to what he was saying, and I found him offensive. As it turned out, I started dating a person who was in church and got me to go with her on a regular basis, whereupon eventually I was indeed saved and understood what that neighbor was trying to tell me. God creates paths that leads to him. I guess that this one was one of mine. I have many other experiences that I'll write about as my time allows. Even one that has to do with the girl that was mentioned. And I moved out of that house a couple of months later, and I remember the day I moved out, a cabinet door in the kitchen had slammed shut by itself, as if something was telling me goodbye. Woo-wee-woo. All right, maybe we got time for this last one. This one's not too long. I can read this one too. And this one's from Pennsylvania, ladies and gentlemen. So let's see what's going on in Pennsylvania. I know some of you out there have read... Oh, God, why did they do this? This is my fourth story that I am sharing. I was reading a story on blah, blah, blah. Okay, so one day I was in the pool having a good time. I must have been around 10 or so, and I was swimming in the 5-foot section where I usually swam. I'd eventually got out of the pool and climbed up onto the wall. Well, the wall was made of cement and went around the whole pool, of course, and I got up on the wall and was actually standing on it, which I guess was rather dumb because it was pretty high up to be standing on, and the ground below, behind the wall, was of course made of cement also. I'm standing on this wall talking to one of my friends who was still in the pool, and all of a sudden I lost my balance and started to fall backwards. As soon as I lost my balance, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to fall and crack my head open. And of course, that's what probably should have happened from the height I was standing and the distance between the fall. And I was like in midair, and I remembered a strange feeling of my body twisting, almost like it had shifted, and I felt like I was floating in the air, and all of a sudden, I landed on my feet. Let me tell you, I don't think much about that. I didn't think much about it that day, except for the fact that I was glad I didn't crack my head open. But let me tell you also that I definitely should have. There was no way that I should not have gotten hurt, standing at least 9 feet above the ground on a slippery cement wall with no shoes and slippery wet feet. Something or someone was definitely watching out for me that day, and I don't know who or what, but I'm glad they were. If anyone out there is reading this, I definitely wouldn't mind some feedback on my story. Thanks for listening. Could be a guardian angel. I don't know. Guardian spirit. I don't know. Ancestor. I don't know. The list is too big. I don't know. But just be grateful you had the experience rather than stitches. That's not a good one to have. I've had a few of those. And that's all kinds of... that's like a 10 on the suck meter. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, well, guys, I think that about wraps it up for tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed this little journey. Ginseng, that's a new name. Good to see you, Ginseng. I hope you're having a good night. And thank you so much for stopping in. Many Musings, I see you came in, and Cade. Who else came in? Let's see. Many Musings. Aussie, Tiger Rock fam, good to see you. Suzanne, good to see you. I don't remember if you were here before or not, but it's good to see you now. So whoever else came in, thank you guys so much for being a part of the show. It always means the world to me to see so many people show up for these bedtime stories. I know they're the shorter version of the show, but they're a lot of fun to do, and I really like coming in on every night and doing these when we're not doing full shows. But please, everybody, please, if you haven't already, please check out our podcast. It's on iTunes, it's on Spotify, it's on iHeart, it's everywhere podcasts are. You'll find the Paranormal Portal podcast. So please check it out. Now, some of you may, as you're looking for Paranormal Portal, you might find another title that still says Paranormal Portal. It's not me. The one that's me has my face on it. So the other people are changing their name. They've been given notice that they have to, and unfortunately, I got to protect the name. I'm sure they're wonderful people, and it's not a personal thing, but I've got a trademark on the name, so I got to protect that, and certainly, I had to do it. But you'll see that out there. That is not me. The one that's me has my face. So I really hope you guys will check it out. It really means the world to me, and it really is an exciting venture for us. And it could very well open a whole lot of doors and possibilities for what we're able to do with the Paranormal Portal. So your support and encouragement will mean the world. Please subscribe. And if you like what you're hearing on the podcast, please let us know and rate the podcast or whatever. It's not expected. It's not necessary. But if you're liking what you're hearing, that'd be really cool. It's always good to get that feedback. If you're not liking what you're hearing, I guess, that's your right as well to leave that feedback. But but I hope you like it. So anyway, guys, I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you're able. So I'll be back tomorrow night for another episode of the Bedtime Stories. And then, of course, on Wednesday, Don will be joining me for the 2-hour show, and another podcast will be dropping out in the podcast verse. And again, special thanks to the people at Revolver for making that all possible. You guys are awesome. So, all right, guys, love you. Have a good night, and I hope you'll be back tomorrow night. But sweet dreams.